Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Shane Beamer, the South Carolina Gamecocks. Can they save the season? Saturday night on the road against Missouri. Is that a hyperbolic statement to make in the middle of September? Yeah, maybe it is, but I think for a lot of South Carolina fans, the expectation was competing for a college football playoff spot in 2025. And you're looking at this game on the road against the top 25 team coming off a loss against Vanderbilt and say, if South Carolina wants to make the college football playoffs, you feel like this game is a must-have on the road. And it's an opportunity to get the ball rolling. I know there's not been a ton of reason on the football field to believe in South Carolina in this game. I get that. I'll say one thing. Go back and watch the first two drives and largely the first half for South Carolina on offense against Vanderbilt. They only got 4 drives, right? The first drive, 7 plays, 75 yards, touchdown. The thing that stood out to me the most was the run game. Rasul Faison getting it going on first and second down. South Carolina staying above the chains. Then you look at the second drive. Say, all right, 6 plays, 43 yards. LaNorris Sellers gets picked off in the red zone, kind of gets fooled on a defensive lineman dropping into some zone coverage. We're moving the football, efficient on first and second down once again. Then the third drive, which was the second to last drive of the half, believe it or not, because Vanderbilt plays so slow on offense. You started moving the football, then you go backwards. You have a bad snap. I believe a snap that Boaz Stanley snapped too early, took a 10-yard negative play right off the bat, kind of killed the drive off. And then LaNorris Sellers goes down. I would argue here that those first 2 drives of that football game against Vanderbilt was the best this South Carolina offense looked, specifically on the offensive line and specifically with the run game and specifically with LaNorris Sellers throwing. I mean, before LaNorris Sellers goes down with the injury, he was 6 of 7 for 94 yards. Rasul Faison was averaging over 8 yards per carry in the first 2 drives. Like, there was some things in those first couple of drives that give South Carolina fans some optimism. Now, the problem was LaNorris Sellers goes down. Vanderbilt, kind of knows that Luke Doty. Look, I love Luke Doty, but you kind of know he's not an exceptional backup quarterback. There's a reason he's a guy that's played some other positions during his time at South Carolina. Got really hard to run the offense. I'll say this. You get back LaNorris Sellers healthy in this game, you can replicate some of the early success you had against Vanderbilt and say, hey, let's see if we can go on the road and win this football game. Now, I want to dive a little bit deeper into what needs to happen. I want to talk about this South Carolina offense because I'll tell you this. I went back and watched the first 2 quarters of the game before LaNorris Sellers went out. I thought you saw a lot of good things, quite frankly, on both sides of the football. Now, there's things on offense and defense we got to correct, but I thought you saw some glimpses. And now you got to go on the road. You can't show glimpses on the road against Missouri. Missouri's a damn good football team. It's got to be consistent. It's got to be consistent for 4 quarters, which has really been the struggle for the South Carolina program under the tenure of Shane Beamer. There's been a lot of highs. There's been a lot of lows. And it's not just as a program. It's from a play-to-play, drive-to-drive basis. If you want to go on the road and beat a team like Missouri, you got to see a little bit more consistency. You got to see the first 2 drives that we saw against Vanderbilt. We got to see that a little bit more Saturday night in Columbia, Missouri. Want to dive into it a little bit more, talk about what we think South Carolina needs to do to win this football game. This is a circle the wagon kind of game. And I think to the South Carolina fans that follow this program closely, this is the similar kind of feeling we had last year at this time. And it was early October, and I believe South Carolina gets smoked at home against Ole Miss. And you kind of felt like the CEO, we ain't going to be that competitive in the SEC. And then it's like you snapped your fingers. They go on the road and almost upset Alabama. And then they don't lose a game until the bowl game against Illinois. Can Shane Beamer circle the wagons and get this team playing the way we know they're capable of playing? Because we've seen the glimpses, right? We saw it the first drive against Virginia Tech, and we saw it the first couple of drives against Vanderbilt. Can we show that consistently on the road against Missouri? And can we get the ball rolling for this football team? Because, look, there's a difference, right? I use this analogy a lot. I'm a Michigan fan. Michigan had a tough year last year. You kind of knew it wasn't going to get better, specifically on offense, because you didn't have the guys. You got the guys. LaNorris Sellers, we know what he can do. In fact, he actually looked pretty damn good before he went down with the injury. Nick Harbor has clearly taken a step and is capable of being that wide receiver one for this offense. Rasul Faison, so the best Rasul Faison has looked by far against Vanderbilt during his career at South Carolina. I mean, there's some reason here. Now, what needs to happen? That's what I want to dive a little bit more into. Before we get into it, as always, the South Carolina fans, appreciate you guys. And I was high on South Carolina. I know many of you all were too. It's been really fun talking about this team in the offseason, and I hope that we get to see this team play the way we think they're capable of playing Saturday night. The support's been amazing. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. I want to start with what we saw on the offensive line. You had a bad snap by Boaz Stanley that kind of killed that third drive. That was the best Josiah Thompson has looked on. Hey, go look at PFF. I mean, my eyeballs were telling me it looked pretty damn good, but I wanted to make sure I was seeing it the right way. So I go look at the PFF grades. There was a lot of green for that South Carolina offensive line. In fact, they only gave up 3 pressures on the game, and they were dropping back and throwing the football. And again, when you had LaNorris Sellers in those first couple of drives, some base run stuff, like it was working. Bodies were moving. Rasul Faison was getting ahead of steam. For the first time really all year, we saw the run game show a little bit of life. And so is the offensive line clicking? Look, I don't know if that's fair to say. I thought it was the best performance we've seen from the offensive line so far. We're going to need that on the road against Missouri. Wide receivers, look, Nick Harbor's that. I love what we've seen from Nick Harbor. We got to keep giving this kid opportunities to impact the game. He is way too much of a difference maker to just use as that gadget guy. He should be getting 5 to 10 targets a game. I like the value you're getting from the tight ends. In fact, and I'm not trying, I want to be careful because I don't want to get up here in Sunshine Pump and say that it was awesome from South Carolina, because it wasn't. But when LaNorris Sellers was in the game, those first 2 drives, it felt like a lot of different things were coming together. We're running the football well. We're staying on schedule. We're marrying it with the pass. Now we got to go see it for 4 quarters against Missouri. Now, the second part is what this South Carolina defense can do. And I'll say this, one, that Vanderbilt offense is, man, it's just really tricky. And when you have a quarterback like Diego that can get himself out of trouble and kind of pull rabbits out of the hat, it makes it hard. You've seen some good things. And you want to talk about a couple of keys. Number one, you got to convert on your pressures more. The South Carolina defense has been able to create a lot of disruption that hasn't translated into a ton of negative plays just yet. And you're dealing with another athletic quarterback in Bo Pribula, who I don't know if he's necessarily the playmaker that Diego Pavia is, but he's a really good athlete. I mean, he's shown he's a really good athlete and can get himself out of trouble. Number one, Missouri hasn't really seen a defensive line like South Carolina. And let's just say it how it is. This South Carolina defensive line has played some really good football. Nick Barrett, he's playing like one of the better interior defensive linemen in the country, especially against the run. Dylan Stewart, Brian Thomas, they are ripping off the edge. And so we think we can do a decent job manufacturing some disruption. The real key is, can we not only get disruption, but can we translate that into negative plays where we're forcing this offense behind schedule and really making Bo Pribula be that pocket passer that we're still waiting to see if he can actually do that against an SEC defense. Here's the other thing, getting off the field on third downs, it killed South Carolina, right? That game Saturday night is kind of played right into Vanderbilt's favor. Now, the second half got wonky because LaNorris Sellers wasn't in. What Vanderbilt did a really good job of is just controlling the time possession, right? We all realized that they were running a play. They were letting the whole play clock go, and then they were running another play. They were just staying on the field, keeping the South Carolina offense off the field. They completely slowed the tempo of that game, really kept LaNorris Sellers on the sideline in the first half. A big part of that was they were really good on third downs. And we knew they were good on third downs, and we knew Aki was getting off the field on third downs. Vandy was 6 of 12 on third downs, 1 of 1 on fourth downs. They were able to make it happen in those money down situations, those downs that really control the outcome of football games. If you're South Carolina, we've seen some good things right? I think the linebackers are better than expected. I think the defensive line is better than expected. Here's the one other thing that we got to talk about here. Jalen Kilgore, who very well could, outside of Dylan Stewart, might be the best football player on this South Carolina defense. He hasn't been yet, right? And I know he's been working through an injury, right? Played against Virginia Tech, sat out against South Carolina State, played against Vanderbilt, wasn't a huge impact on the game. We know what Missouri wants to do when they're throwing the football. They want to go to wide receiver Kevin Coleman, one of the better slot wide receivers in the conference, quite frankly, in the country. By far the leading targets in this Missouri offense. So forget the number, should have written them down. A lot of the South Carolina or Missouri passing attempts, they go to Kevin Coleman. But you got a nickelback in Jalen Kilgore who, like, this kid's played at an All-American level, certainly an All-SEC level. This is the kind of game where you need some of your best players to really have an impact, Jalen Kilgore included. It sounds like there's optimism that LaNorris Sellers will be ready. We saw some good things in the first couple of drives before LaNorris Sellers got hurt. Can you do that again? And how about one? I mean, I know Mike Shula has been taking some heat, and rightfully so. Mike Shula has been really good at scripting first drives. Feels big, like going on the road, hostile environment. Can you go 8 plays, 75 yards, and a touchdown right off the bat here and kind of get the ball rolling? Because this is an opportunity. You almost kind of appreciate that South Carolina's playing a team like Missouri after a loss against Vanderbilt. Because if you go and just beat a team like Kentucky or you beat a team like a G5 team, that probably ain't going to get the ball. This is an opportunity to actually get the ball rolling and rebound from that loss against Vanderbilt. We'll see how it looks. This, to me, feels like a save the season, circle the wagon moment. And we have seen Shane Beamer in South Carolina do just that at times. You feel like you need it on the road here against Missouri. Can South Carolina do it? We'll find out Saturday night. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. Been a blast talking this team. I hope it's going to continue to be a blast talking this team. And win or lose, the best way for me to put it is just want to go see this team play the way they're capable of playing. Because if they do that, they have a chance to win this football game. We just haven't seen it almost at all during the early portions of the season. Appreciate you guys. I'm going to talk to y'all later.